the Isle of Samoa, weighing in at 350 pounds, Umaga!
Arguably the most athletic super heavyweight in the annals of the WWE.
How do you combat somebody who's 350 pounds and moves as quickly as Umaga does?
I feel like Yankee deserves a spot into the WWE Hall of Fame.
And I really do feel like he could have been a massive draw in pro wrestling if he would have been able to keep everything between the lines and stay healthy.
The 2000s saw many attempts by WWE to create the perfect monster heel, and while most of them failed spectacularly, a rare exception to this norm was the late great Umaga, one of the most underrated in-ring performers during the Ruthless Aggression era. So what went right? How did Umaga succeed where many big men before and after him failed? In order for us to really see the full picture, let's go back to his first run in WWE. In July of 2002, Edward Smith Fatu made his debut alongside real-life cousin and Roman Reigns' older brother, Matt Anoa'i, to form the somewhat forgotten tag team called 3-Minute Warning. Known simply as Jamal and Rosie, the two behemoths were brought in by Eric Bischoff as hired mercenaries who would beat up unsuspecting victims that failed to entertain the Raw GM within a 3-minute time limit. During their run, the duo assaulted pretty much everybody from wrestlers to ring announcers and even Hall of Famers. Two of them also happened to be old grannies. Eventually, they would also bring in Rico as their manager, and even though they had backing from Bischoff himself, the group never really found much success, mostly being fed to other higher profile teams. And less than a year later, 3-Minute Warning would officially come to an end in June of 2003 after Jamal was released from his contract due to his involvement in a bar fight. Speaking about this in a later interview, Jim Ross explained that Jamal's out-of-control antics outside of the ring is what ultimately led to him getting fired, and that they wanted to see him grow and mature elsewhere first before potentially signing him back. So he did just that, as following his release, he would find himself wrestling in TNA for a few months before moving to All Japan Pro Wrestling in November of 2003. There, he would finally hit his stride as a performer, teaming with Taiyo Kea and eventually winning the vacant World Tag Team Championship by beating Hiroshi Tanahashi and Yutaka Yoshi. After holding the belts for a whopping 323 days, while also being a prominent player in the upper mid-card scene, WWE decided to give Jamal that second chance and signed him back in December of 2005. Donning the face tattoos and harkening back to his roots, he would get rechristened as the Samoan Bulldozer Umaga. On the April 3rd, 2006 episode of Raw, Ric Flair was cutting an impassioned promo when suddenly a rich-looking Cuban aristocrat named
Armando Alejandro Estrada
interrupted Flair, claiming he has the man that will change WWE forever. The Nature Boy wasn't all too pleased with this and dared him to introduce said man, to which Estrada responded by bringing out Umaga for all to witness. Flair would then try to jump Umaga as he entered the ring, but to no avail, and he would get savagely demolished by the Samoan Bulldozer, putting everyone on notice. And so, at the Backlash pay-per-view, Umaga would face Ric Flair in a one-on-one match, squashing the 16-time world champion in under 5 minutes. With an impressive debut in the books, a rocket would be strapped to the Samoan Bulldozer as he would go on an undefeated streak in the months that followed, garnering some not so clean but still huge upset victories over the likes of Shawn Michaels, Triple H, and even WWE champion John Cena. As Umaga started becoming sort of a hard gun for the McMahons, he would get involved in their match at SummerSlam, taking out both Shawn and Hunter while the referee was distracted. However, as it would turn out, DX also had a monster in their back pocket as Kane came out to even the odds, sending the Savage scurrying to the back and helping the good guys get a victory. This kick-started a feud between the two monsters, with both getting involved in each other's business in the weeks that followed. Finally, at that year's Unforgiven, they would go head-to-head in singles action. The Big Red Monster showed why he's still one of the most feared wrestlers in the roster, as he seemed to match the Samoan Bulldozer pound for pound. Eventually, their brawl would spill outside of the ring, causing the match to end in a count-out disappointment. The two would have a rematch on the Raw following the pay-per-view, but again, there would be no clear victor as Kane would hit Umaga with multiple chair shots to the head, resulting in a disqualification. This would all culminate in the October 9th episode of Raw when the two battled each other in the Loser Leaves Raw match. Umaga ended up beating Kane, sending the Big Red Machine packing to SmackDown. SmackDown. And while this signaled the end of their rivalry, the two men would meet each other one last time at the Cyber Sunday pay-per-view, with Umaga getting another clean victory over the Big Red Monster. The following Raw, he would be pitted by Eric Bischoff against an unlikely opponent in Maria, who was forced to compete by the spiteful GM, believing that she was plotting against him. Unsurprisingly, the Samoan Bulldozer would demolish the helpless diva, and just when she was about to be unalived on live TV, John Cena came out to save what's left of Maria, planting the seeds for an eventual rivalry. In the lead-up to Survivor Series, the two would compete in singles action, which got cut short when Big Show, who was Umaga's team captain in the traditional 5-on-5 against Cena, came down to the ring to help lay waste to their enemy. At the pay-per-view, however, we wouldn't see much of Umaga as he got himself disqualified and eliminated first by taking out the opposing team with a TV monitor out of frustration. But instead of this being seen as a setback, Estrada would manage to parlay Umaga's destruction into challenging Cena for the WWE title, which the champ accepted, even allowing them to pick the date and place. And so, a WWE title match was made official for the first pay-per-view of 2007, New Year's Revolution. During the build-up, interim general manager Jonathan Coachman added a stipulation that Umaga and Cena can't get physical with each other for the rest of the year unless it's in a match they're both involved in, which both men fully took advantage of. Finally, in the main event of the pay-per-view, they would come to blows in a very physical back and forth match, which saw Cena snap Umaga's undefeated streak with a roll-up, that is. Well, a disappointing way to end the streak, this roll-up victory would be used to further the feud between the two, as over the next couple of weeks, Estrada would try and discredit Cena's victory, calling it a fluke, which resulted in a rematch being set for Royal Rumble. And during the contract signing for their match, Coachman would let Estrada pick the stipulation, which he revealed to be a last man standing match. Cena would agree to this and took out his adversaries to end the segment. However, on the go-home Raw before the pay-per-view, Umaga would get one over the champ when he managed to put him through a table, leading to a worked injury that stacked the deck in the Samoan Bulldozer's favor even more. And at the Royal Rumble pay-per-view, Umaga and John Cena clashed in what turned out to be an instant classic, a bloody and violent war that ended with the champ choking the life out of the big man with the ring ropes to retain his title. This marked the end of their short but legendary feud, and after proving that he could hang with the big boys, Umaga would take part in another high-profile rivalry as he was handpicked by Vince McMahon to represent him in the infamous Battle of the Billionaires against Donald Trump at WrestleMania 23. To sort of motivate the Samoan Bulldozer, Vince also made an Intercontinental title match that same night, pitting an unprepared Jeff Hardy against a hungry challenger, resulting in Umaga winning his first title on the main roster. Meanwhile, Trump would announce his pick to represent him, that being ECW champion Bobby Lashley. The two rich moguls would trade barbs in the coming weeks, which culminated with Trump embarrassing McMahon by pushing him through a table during their contract signing. And so, at WrestleMania, it was Umaga versus Bobby Lashley with both Billionaires' hairs on the line, and to add more intrigue, Stone Cold Steve Austin as the special guest referee. The match started like a typical one-on-one, but then quickly devolved into anything goes when Shane got involved. As part of McMahon's trump card, Umaga would take Austin out, with Shane replacing him as the referee. At one point, it looked like Umaga had it in the bag after a Samoan splash, but then Austin came back just in time to open a kind of whoop-ass, allowing Lashley to take over and get the W. After the match, Vince would try to escape his fate but ate a stunner for his efforts instead. The three men would then take great pleasure in shaving him bald for everyone to see, and to cap it off, Austin would also deliver a stunner to the future president just for the heck of it. The bad luck would continue for the Samoan Bulldozer post-WrestleMania, as he then lost his title to a debuting Santino Marella with some help from Bobby Lashley. It was also around this time that Umaga would get quietly split from his manager Armando Estrada, citing an overabundance of people at ringside during WrestleMania as the main reason. All the while though, he still remained loyal to Mr. McMahon, even aiding him in winning and keeping the ECW title in several 3-on-1 handicap matches. After fulfilling his obligations to the McMahons and going solo for the first time, Umaga would set his sights on regaining the Intercontinental title, facing Santino at the Vengeance pay-per-view. He would end up losing via disqualification though, letting his temper get the best of him, but then win the title in a rematch the following night on Raw. Interestingly enough, he would briefly tease a face return on the August 6th episode of Raw, helping an old foe in John Cena fend off an attack from Randy Orton and Carlito after their match. They even teamed up the following week and successfully defeated the bad guys. The face stick didn't last long, however, as Umaga would end up assaulting a returning Jeff Hardy when it looked like he was going after Mr. Kennedy, which ended up backfiring on the Samoan Bulldozer as he lost his title to Hardy just a week later. On the same night, Umaga would team up with Carlito to face Triple H in a handicap match, only for it to end in a DQ finish. During the post-match beatdown, the game would be able to retaliate, sending Carlito running and brutally bludgeoning Umaga with a sledgehammer. This led to the big man being taken out of TV for several weeks to sell the injury until he returned in the October 1st episode of Raw, setting up a match with Triple H at No Mercy. It was initially just gonna be a straight-up singles competition, but then got changed into a WWE Championship match after Hunter beat Orton for the title earlier in the show. Unfortunately, Umaga was unsuccessful in capturing the belt and again in a street fight rematch at Cyber Sunday. Their feud would culminate at Survivor Series that year when Team Umaga lost to Team Triple H in pretty convincing fashion, after which Umaga wouldn't really be involved in any consistent storylines for the rest of the year till the early part of 2008. While still being used consistently, he was mostly losing in DQ finishes and multi-man matches. It was only until WrestleMania 24 that Umaga found himself in another prominent role when he was chosen to represent Raw and face Batista in a SmackDown vs. Raw match.
Representing Raw at WrestleMania, the Samoan Bulldozer, Umaga!
A mostly forgotten and underwhelming WrestleMania match which saw him losing to Batista in under 8 minutes. He would later reignite his on and off rivalry with Jeff Hardy, producing some memorable spots but ultimately losing their blow-off match at the One Night Stand pay-per-view. Then, at the 2008 WWE Draft, Umaga would get shipped off to SmackDown and immediately teased a feud with The Big Show in July of that year. Nothing came out of it, however, as Umaga suffered a torn PCL during a house show which took him out of action for almost half a year. He would make his much-awaited return on the January 27, 2009 edition of SmackDown, sporting a new theme song and going back to the typical monster heel face of squashing random jobbers. However, due to a lack of any creative direction, he was taken off TV again for about 2 months, returning only after WrestleMania 25 and setting his sights on Mr. Money in the Bank, CM Punk. And after several weeks of being a thorn in Punk's side by preventing his cash-in attempts, the two would clash in a banger of a match at Judgment Day, with Umaga scoring his first big victory in quite some time. They'd have a slightly less eventful outing the following month in a strap match at Extreme Rules, with Umaga taking a clean loss to Punk this time around. Unfortunately, this would end up being his last match in WWE as he was released from his contract after getting a second wellness policy violation and refusing to go to rehab. He would shortly turn up in the independent circuit before reportedly reaching an agreement to come back to WWE at Royal Rumble 2010. But in a devastating turn of events, Umaga would pass away just a month shy of the pay-per-view on December 4th of 2009 after suffering a heart attack. He was just 36 years old at the time of his passing.
We'll cross paths again, amigo. In the big sky. I'll see you soon. The Samoan Bulldozer! Umaga.
So how good was Umaga actually? If I was to rate the gimmick on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm giving it a 7 out of 10. Let me explain why. Well, unlike most monster heels during this time, Umaga is actually a solid worker and can put on decent to great matches on a regular basis. He never felt out of place when being pitted against the top guys on Raw. And in fact, you could even say that he brought out the best in John Cena during their feud. And though Umaga's career was cut short with his untimely passing, his influence in the business can still be seen today. I seriously think there's a good chance we'll see Umaga inducted in the Hall of Fame at some point, maybe even as early as 2025, because he definitely deserves it. Anyway, if you watched this video all through the end, let me know by saying rest in peace Umaga in the comments below. And if you wanna see what a failed attempt at a monster heel looks like, check out the next video in your screen. See you there.